36 hours. That's how long I kept at it, checking Facebook for new posts that I would quickly counter as directly as they had countered my previous counter. Back and forth we went. It was a day and a half after the Supreme Court overturned the nearly 50-year precedent that had guaranteed that people who become pregnant in this country have the right to choose to end that pregnancy through abortion. I had come across a former chaplain colleague's Facebook page. He was a Franciscan priest, and most of his friends were doing the pro-life happy dance at that time. I took the bait and jumped into the fray. 36 hours later, exhausted, frustrated, and angry, I finally shut my computer and gave up. I had gotten caught in the internet cyber scream, too focused on rejecting the other's position to question what I actually believed. Because the truth is, the conversation about choice and reproductive justice is so much more complex and nuanced than any quick social media post could allow. Even most national media outlets have little bandwidth to create real conversation. Now, of course, my message today does not begin to encompass all the aspects of reproductive justice that are vital to address. But as the days passed and the debate continued across the internet and airways, I felt that there was a message that was being missed in the polarized rhetoric. One that, though I believed strongly, I too had failed to communicate myself in that defensive back and forth in those posts. So today I decided I wanted to share with you that message that I feel is part of the conversation that I hope we as a nation and those of us who identify as pro-choice will begin to have. It's a piece that I wish I had shared during that 36-hour of cyber shouting. So I'm calling it Choice and Life. So here it goes. For me, choice and life contains two truths. First, human life begins at or very near conception. And second, humans who are impregnated have the right to bodily autonomy, and their right to end a pregnancy must be protected under the law. Now, much of the abortion life rhetoric of the day would say that these two beliefs are antithetical to each other because of the core arguments each side holds. Much of the abortion life rhetoric of the day would say that you cannot believe both. Too often debates erupt as people try to wrestle out that one question: when does life begin? One side uses shame tactics, the will of God, and claims of murdering babies as their main talking points. The other often tries to make abortion an emotionless, low-stakes medical procedure to remove a not really alive fetus. Personally, I think this is a false narrative that leads to a fake fight that is actually not only hurting the pro-choice movement, but also harming many people who are pregnant, and especially harming those who are pregnant and do choose to have an abortion. I've come to a choice and life position through my own life experience with my womb and with those who have occupied it. I felt I couldn't have this conversation without them, so I would like to introduce them to you. I have been pregnant 5 times, and 5 times I felt a unique life in my body, a life that was connected to but clearly independent of my own. Now, baby 1 felt very strong-willed coming into this world without my invitation. I knew I was pregnant before a test confirmed it, and I knew what my choice about that pregnancy would be. I was 17, and our lives felt incompatible. I had an abortion at 7 weeks. I'm going to talk more about that choice later in my reflection, but first I want to talk about this spirit that shared my body for almost 2 months. During that short time of pregnancy, I noticed I always thought of this fetus as he. Not that I knew the sex or gender of this one for sure. He just always felt like he. A year and a half after the abortion, I was in a flea market and came across a set of gnome figurines. I was attracted to one in particular. His gnome birth date was July 1983, a date that was most likely would have been my child's birth month. The gnome's name was Josh, and I liked that name. It could have been a name that I picked. Still feeling tenderness about the abortion decision and fleeting sense of who this person had been, I bought Josh the gnome. And he has stayed with me almost 40 years now. My second pregnancy was not planned either. I was not married. But ending that pregnancy never crossed my mind. It wasn't actually until recently that I realized that fact. Maybe because of how intense my abortion had been at 17, or maybe my soul had other plans, the thought of abortion was never put on the table. This baby had a very different energy from the first pregnancy. A friend had given me a stuffed, floppy-eared rabbit as soon as she heard I was pregnant. I called him Rama Rabbit. Rama for the Hindu god of virtue and love. I took Rama everywhere. Almost immediately, though, I seemed that something was wrong with that pregnancy. And right around week 7, this one ended in a spontaneous abortion, also known as a miscarriage. I cried and hugged Rama a lot, but somehow felt a sense of it was meant to be. Less than 3 months later, and after the wedding, my daughter Rhea nestled her spirit inside my body. Her spirit was earthly and strong from the very beginning, and there was no doubt in my mind that this girl was going to be born. I remember very clearly the moment around 3 months into the pregnancy when her identity seemed to download into my thoughts. I got a clear picture of a blue-eyed little girl named Rhea. And on May Day, 1993, a very earth-centered day, Rhea, the blue-eyed earth goddess, was born with a strong, clear desire to incarnate. Pregnancy number 4 came 15 months later and was immediately hanging on to its incarnation by a string. I say this because it felt like a literal truth. I remember taking walks in the woods and having this sensation like I was carrying a balloon, holding onto a string as the balloon floated way above me. I had a sense that this one was far, far away. Another spontaneous abortion occurred at 7 weeks. My daughter Kristen was my 5th and final pregnancy in this lifetime. I was so sure that she was filled with feminine energy that my husband and I never even picked masculine associated names. In utero, Kristen was shy, and I remember feeling very protective of her. I didn't think she would miscarry, but I did feel she was sensitive, and I wanted to be her protector. And sure enough, born August 18th, 1996, little Kristen was a shy child, very, very attached to Mama until her teenage years. But that's a different sermon. So as you can see, I believe that life begins at conception. It is my true felt experience. And I believe strongly that the choices about these lives fall squarely on the person who is pregnant. So let's talk about choice. The abortion I chose to have was not easy. It was a medical one, and I remember actually screaming through much of it. Even the doctor who performed the abortion seemed uneasy at my amount of pain. It wasn't necessarily physical pain, but more emotional and spiritual pain. I didn't want an abortion, nor did I want a child at that moment. I was in an abusive relationship at the time. I did not know how to get myself out of the abuse, but I did know that bringing a child into that mix would not help anyone. I felt that even just being pregnant within the abuse was dangerous. I was grateful that the choice to end the pregnancy was available to me. I often wonder if I would still be alive had I brought that baby into that abuse before I figured out how to leave it. I wondered if he would have survived. My gnome, Josh, came with a story card that has helped me in processing his departure. One of its lines reads, "Josh is a scout of the Wood Spirit clan. It is his job to find the best site for the evening campfire." Something about that sentence struck me as I read it the first time. Perhaps Josh had been a spirit scout for his other siblings. His job was to find a safe spot, and clearly the one he encountered with me at the time was not safe. So Joshua holds two truths for me: the gratitude that I could make a choice about my life that may very well have saved it, and grief that his life was so very short. In my processing after my abortion, I felt very alone and ashamed. I had not shared my pregnancy with anyone except the father. Over the months after the abortion, as my grades slipped and I grew distant from my friends, my teachers and friends tried to understand what was going on with me, but I kept it all hidden. And I often wonder now how different my life would have been at that time if my shame had not prevented me from accepting their help. What if there would have been a place to go to grieve and to support and to find support from others who had walked this path? As the fight around abortion intensified over the years, I found myself often burying my true feelings about my abortion. Yes, I was grateful the option was there, and of course, I wanted laws to continue to give other women that choice. And there was another experience I was secretly living. Each year in July, I would count. And I know some of you know what I mean. How old would that baby be now? 40 years this year. I know what ifs are a useless game to play, but sometimes I venture there anyway. Because with death comes grief. And I am convinced that the conversation that denies the life of a fetus also suppresses the grief process. It's the little secret of the pro-choice movement that there are people that grieve the lost babies, who consider them babies lost, and who may even regret their choices. Now, I know that not all people who have an abortion feel the need to grieve, and for some, they may truly have felt like their abortion was a simple medical procedure with little or no emotional attachment. For some, the decision was never second-guessed, and I have lots of space for that truth as well. But I also want those of us in the pro-choice movement to have space for those who share my experience. How would it change the conversation of those of us in the pro-choice movement if we said, yes, you're right. You're right, pro-lifers, life begins at conception. There is a tiny being inside my womb. And that is why it is so vital that a person who is pregnant has the choice about whether to carry that life or not. Just because a fetus is alive does not negate the fact that a person who is pregnant should have the right to bodily autonomy, just as much as a person has the right to protect their personal safety in a variety of situations. Accepting that a fetus is a live human allows us to consider parallels not tenable if we say a fetus is not alive. So let's think about this for a moment. According to Georgia's Stand Your Ground law, citizens can use deadly force to defend themselves, other people, or even property if they believe such force is necessary to prevent death or even bodily injury. They have no duty to retreat, but can stand their ground. In Georgia, you can kill someone who tries to come onto your property and take the shovel out of your shed. But if a life enters your body and its existence threatens your own, you do not have the right to end that life after 6 weeks. Perhaps it's a false equivalent many would argue with me about, but for me, I find it interesting that someone can feel so strongly about the pro-life stance while at the same time feel justified to wave a gun at anyone who gets near their stuff. I say, if you can defend your shed, I can defend my womb. If you get to decide who comes into your house, I get to decide who comes into my body. The gun lobby wants to ensure that there are gun sellers on every corner. Well, what if we ensure that there are reproductive health centers on every corner? Easily accessible and financially accessible to every woman and every person who can become pregnant. If we could lobby for reproductive access at the same level the NRA lobbies for gun access, we would have a world where the only babies being born are the ones born by choice. And the extended effects of that would be tremendous. Because of lack of access, Black women and poor women are disproportionately impacted by unintended pregnancies. And now that disparity is growing because of new laws in many states. And this is unacceptable. As a society that says it believes in human rights, we must ensure that people have sex education, family planning, low-cost contraception, and adequate medical care. We must ensure that people who are pregnant have the resources to have a healthy, safe pregnancy, if that is their decision, and access to care if they choose to end that pregnancy. And we must ensure that when a pregnancy ends suddenly, whether through abortion or miscarriage, that the pregnant person gets support to grieve the loss that they have experienced. Reproductive rights are human rights, and we must work to achieve a society that is run by the doctrine of human rights. In order to properly have a debate about the laws of abortion, I feel it is vital that we first acknowledge that conception results in life, however little and tiny. People choose abortion for a variety of reasons, and I strongly believe that the pregnant person has the right to discern that choice for themselves. They do not need to justify why they made that choice. But the truth is, in most cases, we must understand that the choice was most likely very difficult. That choice did not end the day the baby left the body. Just because someone chooses abortion does not mean that they will not feel a wave of complicated emotions afterwards. Abortion rights must come with abortion care. And it is my sincere belief that a clear acknowledgement of life will usher in a greater ability to acknowledge the need for choice. Life is sacred and tender, and choice is sacred and vital. So these are my thoughts. about this very tender topic and where I've come to thanks to these 5 beings in my life. I'm going to invite us now to take a moment to reflect. So if you'd like to do that with your eyes closed or open, I ask you, what do you truly believe? Beyond the rhetoric, beyond the polarized conversations, what is true for you?
Bows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way. Now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in the way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusion I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way. Now it's just another show. You leave them laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let it show. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds, I've looked at life that way. But now old friends are acting strange. They say, they shake their heads and say I've changed, and something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all.
Wow. Thank you, Bruce. Unitarian Universalism is a faith often referred to as one of deeds, not creeds. It is how we show up in the world that we live our faith. One way we seek to do that is by partnering with other organizations who work to bring love, kindness, and justice to the world. Each Sunday, we collect financial contributions which are shared equally with our partner organization. This month, we share our basket with Access Reproductive Care. Their mission is to provide funding and logistical support to ensure Southerners receive safe and compassionate reproductive care, including abortion services. Through education and leadership development, they build power in communities of color to abolish stigma and restore dignity and justice. Their work includes offering peer-to-peer support groups for those that have had abortions. We encourage each of you to support this vital work. Please offer a donation as you are able, or take one of the cards that describes the ways to give electronically. Ways to give are also posted in the chat. All donations, unless otherwise specified, are shared equally with Emerson and our partner organization.
Thank you for this support, your support of this very vital organization. In closing, I have a few hopes to share. My hope is that we restore abortion rights to all states and that abortion is seen as the health care that it is. My hope is that we remove the shame and stigma of choice to abort a pregnancy. My hope is that we create spaces and places where people who are pregnant and choose abortion are cared for and supported in their grieving and in the physical and emotional recovery as they may need. My hope is that we acknowledge that the debate about choice is not about when life begins. And my hope is that while we work to support and protect the health and life of the pregnant person, that we all work together to ensure that the lives of those humans that are born are safe, loved, and celebrated. Let's make space for grief so that we have the strength for life. Together we can bring more humanity in our choices and in our life. Blessed be, friends. Thank you for allowing me to share my message this morning. As always, you may not agree with what you heard from the pulpit, and you're invited to come to our service reflections to share afterwards.